I'm Tanya, and welcome to this session that we are going to do today. And this is more of an experiment that we're going to do today so that you can get a better understanding of the movement that your spine does, and in terms of the posture, balance, a little bit of breathing, and even how, let's say, for example, the shoulders can affect spine movement. Okay, so it's not so much of a class, so to speak, but something that is quite important for us to teach as teachers. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, first of all, the different postures that we can get in the outside world, and maybe a little bit of anatomy lesson, maybe. So in Pilates, we always talk about a neutral spine and neutral pelvis. Now, a neutral spine is when your spine is sitting in the most perfect position for each of the bones. And by perfect, there's no such thing as perfect. But each bone is sat on it, on the one below it, exactly as it should be sitting. That reduces stress on joints, tendons, ligaments, and all sorts of stuff. So that is why it's a neutral. It's the best posture with the least stress on the body. So ideally, we all want to have this neutral spine. So when walking around, we're getting older, we want to try and maintain that neutral spine. But of course, life does happen, and we'll end up sitting in a job for 40 years, or perhaps you've just given birth. That will affect the shape of your spine. Maybe you got a bit of weight around the tummy, or even stuff like osteoporosis, like genetics, can also affect posture and spine. So let's talk about one of the most common ones that we get in older people, and that's kyphosis. So someone has a kyphotic posture, and that is when they tend to have the head forward. So again, that can be a genetic thing, so especially osteoporosis, and there's not really much you can do about that, apart from really try and strengthen the supporting muscles around the spine to help protect the spine, and also to try and maintain that posture. So we have that kind of posture. If it's not a genetic thing, it can be because this upper back is very weak, and that's usually from long periods of driving or sitting at a desk. So we have these round-shouldered, also ladies with really big boobs. This is why I think a breast reduction should be available on the NHS for free, because it can have such an impact on a person's posture. And also these muscles become, and I like to use the term shrink in layman's terms, they actually become shortened. But when we're not using them, the body's going, well, you don't need all that muscle, I'm going to take some of it away. It just makes it a bit shorter. So we'll end up with that kind of posture, walking around, looking very happy. And of course, that affects mental health. I mean, you try and laugh with your shoulders in that position as well, rather than open. So that's kyphosis. Lordosis, or a lordotic posture, is when people have that sticky out bum. So that would be like pregnant people, or possibly overweight people, just because of the weight and gravity pulling that belly down forward. Again, people that sit a lot also have a bit of this issue going on here. So they might have a little bit of lordosis and a little bit of kyphosis because of what they're doing on the computers and stuff. Again, this one is probably the most common one that we come across in classes. Tight hips. So again, these muscles in the front of the body have shortened or tightened. So think of shrinking. I say it's not technically, that's not what happens, but just to make it easier to understand. And then again, they might have a weak upper back as well. So this can cause a lot of back pain, this particular posture. So, you know, if you know that you sit a lot, or you've got any back pain around this area next to the spine there, chances are that you've got some tightness in some of the muscles that work around the hip. So there's that one. Then we've got a flat back, which is quite rare. It's basically, I can't even imitate it. It's basically when you have no curve. And that can be Again, it can be a genetic thing. It can just be how someone's developed over the years. Like some people might not even have a cervical curve, and it's just the way they've grown up and done whatever they've done. Or I've worked with clients that have got complete rods in their back. And a rod is straight. You can't make a rod the shape of a spine. I suppose you could. But they have a straight back because they've got a rod sticking all the way up their spine. So that is a flat back, okay? We get sway back, and I can be a little bit sway backy if I'm lazy. And that's when people so I tend to put the weight into the balls of my feet. So you can see my hips are pushing slightly forward, whereas the weight should actually be down between the heel and the forefoot, so between that area. So that can be, like me, a little bit of a lazy thing. But it can also be for some people that are hypermobile. So hypermobile is those double jointed people, and the elbows bend all the way there and the knees bend all the way like that. They tend to sit in their joints. It's called sitting in your joint, and they tend to just hang, and it's just so easy for them to sit there. Not good for the joints though. I have worked with people before that didn't realize they were hypermobile, and then told them to unlock their elbows and their knees through the whole class, and they couldn't walk after the class again because the muscles have had to actually do something for the first time in their life. So that's another reason people can hang out in the joints, is if they're hypermobile. It's just so easy and comfortable for them. They could stand there forever. But it's really, you're putting so much stress onto the joint. So, and then the last one is scoliosis. So scoliosis is that S shape. Again, that can be genetic, and it can be quite a disabling, I can't even speak, a disabling posture to have. For some people, it can be very, very severe. And then, so the shoulder blade is having to move out, and it can affect the whole upper back area. So sometimes maybe you've seen some that they've got a bit of a hunchback on one side, and that is possibly a scoliosis that they've got. So like I said, for some people that can be a genetic. The only way they could correct that is through surgery, and even sometimes then that doesn't work. But it can also be a muscular imbalance. And what I mean by that is, so some people will have a leg length discrepancy, and unfortunately the NHS don't recognize that. I think it's 2.5 centimeters. Anything under 2.5 centimeters they don't recognize. Now if you think this mat is 1 inch, I think. So it's actually quite a big difference to have a leg length discrepancy. And what your brain does is it makes your eyes straight. So it will adjust your body. So if I were to stand on there, it would do something like this with the body. So over time, a scoliosis develops. And really, it's such a shame, because if someone's young and they catch this when they early years or teenagers or whatever, all they need to do is just put a little heel lift in the shorter side, and that straightens the whole body up. And we've got clients that are now 50, 60 with the scoliosis, which could have been prevented just by putting that heel lift in. So now it's going to take a very long time to readjust that body to straighten up. And sometimes it's like, do you know what? If you haven't got any pain and it's not causing you any issues, sometimes things are better left alone than us trying to fix it. So unless someone is in severe pain from it, then we would try and help them. So that's scoliosis. So I'll go through that again. So when someone's kyphotic, the pelvis or the pubic bone is coming up and the tailbone is going down. So posteriorly tilted pelvis, posterior tilted pelvis in there. Kyphosis, so the spine is doing kyphosis. Lordotic spine, or an anterior tilted pelvis, in that way. So those are the two common ones. And then the neutral spine is just when everything is nicely aligned above each bone under that, and that includes the hips, like I said. So for me, bouncing my hips forward, that means somewhere in there, there's going to be undue strain on those joints or stress, because that's not how the joints naturally sit in each other. I should pull those hips back a little bit. So that was just an input on spine shapes. So now what you can do is get your partner or someone to just watch how you walk when you're not aware of it, or even just get them to take some photos but try and stand completely natural against like a background like this, and just see if you recognize which posture you are. It's actually quite interesting when you find out which one you are, because it does affect how some of the exercises are going to work on your body. So that is all for this part of it, and now we're going to experiment against the wall. So, if you have space against a wall, a cupboard, a fridge, anything, a door that you can work against, this is a really good exercise to do against the wall. Again, it's going to just teach you a little bit about your own posture and your own spine, and how moving your levers can affect spine as well. So, the first thing we're going to do is have our back against a wall, and the feet are going to be hip width apart. So, ladies tend to go too wide. So we're focusing on the front of the hips. We all have these bony parts at the front of the pelvis. So if you've got a little bit of body there, you might need to dig your fingers in, but everyone does have it. Okay, we all have a bony pelvis. And then your knees are under that area. Okay, and then your ankles are underneath there. So from there, just take a moment to lengthen your spine. So lengthen is when we're lifting the spine up towards the ceiling, almost like I want the crown of my head to touch the ceiling. And you will naturally feel yourself pull in a little bit around the waist. And then have a shoulder roll. So pull your shoulders forward, take them up to your ears, squeeze your shoulder blades, and then drop them down the back. So if you are a kyphotic posture or a posteriorly tilted pelvis, you might actually feel when you're squeezing your shoulder blades together, this is probably what it feels like in your head. And that is proprioceptors. That is like your brain's being told, your brain is so used to how your posture is that anything outside of that is not normal for your brain. So now, when you are putting yourself in that natural posture, your body's going, no, that's not, that feels very weird. So for example, I've had clients that are pigeon-toed, and I've actually put their feet into a neutral position, so toes pointing forward, but in their head, if they close their eyes, what their body feels like it's doing is the toes feel like they're massively going out. Again, that's proprioceptor. So try and ignore what your brain's saying. Okay, so shoulders are down the back. Now from here, we're going to do what's called a knee bend. So if you need to look down for the first few, that's fine, but then we do want to lift that head as well. So with the knee bend, really good knee exercise, actually this one. So we're going to soften the knees and just start to bend the knees down so that your knees are staying in line with your middle toes. And go down as far as you can. Now, if you've got a mirror or something, check, because what most people will want to do is bring those knees in together. So you've really got to engage this inner thigh a little bit and then bring yourself back up again. It's not a big move. But now what I actually want you to really focus on is the neutral pelvis. So the two hip bones are nice and straight. So let me just stand. So the pelvis is not sitting that way and it's not sitting that way. It's in the middle. Okay? So if you had to take the intestines and the belly and everything away and put that pelvis against the wall, the two hips and the pubic bone would be against the wall. Okay? I've got a window behind me. So we slide down. Now I know that what I tend to do is I stick the bum out. I'll take that hand away so you can see in that camera. So I tend to stick the coccyx out and the belly forward when I'm doing this, because it gives the legs a little bit more space. So be mindful that we stay in that neutral pelvis and you slide down. If you need to look down at your knees, look down at your knees. Knees stay in line with the middle toes. The shoulders are back. The tummy is pulled in. So you almost want to think of these abdominal muscles are pulling your ribs and your hips closer together, and then push yourself back up again. So take it down. Now you can, if you want to, keep your hands on those hip bones. I often like to keep my hands there just to give me feedback. So you want to notice, I'm going to exaggerate it, is your pelvis, if I'm standing from the side, is this happening? The only thing that moves are the knee. If you actually think, it's the ankle joint and the knee joint that are moving. Nothing else is moving. Good, so we do a few more. You might find that after a while the ankles are warming up a little bit, so you might be able to take that just a little bit lower. Really good calf stretch, this one as well. Fantastic knee exercise. It really helps to strengthen that knee joint. Good, so last one. Lovely. And then we'll turn back to the front. So bringing yourself against the wall again, have your hands next to the side, shoulders now. You can almost exaggerate this one as well if you want to. So really try and pull those shoulder blades to touch your spine. Head is against the wall, shoulders are back. Breathe in. As you breathe out, you're going to send your hand down towards your knee. But now watch this top shoulder. Does the top shoulder creep forward? Or can you keep it back, and does the head fall forward? So keeping the head up and back as well. And it doesn't really matter what you do with the breath, to be honest. Paul and I do a lot of opposites on some of the exercises. Amazes me sometimes how we've stayed married. So now what you want to do, just keep going while I cue. What you want to do is make sure that the shoulders, both your shoulder blades, are staying against the wall the whole time. The rib cage is staying against the wall. Back of the head is staying against the wall. Good. So you might now start to notice that one side is easier. Now the next thing I want you to notice is the weight in your feet. So is there, I've got to try and do it wrong, that movement, okay? We want those hips to stay completely still. We just want the spine to move. And really it's just the lower part of the spine. So if you had a pair of bathroom scales under each foot, that weight would stay exactly the same each time. Pulling in that tummy, making sure the rib cage stays against the wall. Back of the head stays against the wall. Good. So often in the classes when we do this, if you're not aware, this is why it's so good, because you get this feedback from the wall. Sometimes, and it can be a lack of awareness, or it can just be there's tight muscles in the body that when you go to the side, the body's pulling the body into one direction. But if you're aware of that, you can try and stop it by actually engaging some other muscles to keep it back. And it might reduce the movement, but over a period of time that will get better and better. So again, it's a little bit harder when you're not against the wall, because you have to actually be more conscious, more aware, more contrology. Good, so once you come back up, relax. Now we're going to lead into roll downs. I love roll downs. Lots of different ways you can teach it. I'm just going to teach this very easily, very simply. So again, we're going to start neutral spine, neutral pelvis. So the feet are directly under the hips and standing nice and tall again. So just taking the moment to lengthen your spine. You can feel that tummy naturally engage. And now soften your knees. It just takes any pull out of the back of the leg, especially if you've got quite tight hamstrings, these muscles at the back of your legs. They're very stiff. Just bending the knees can ease that a little bit for you. Now we're going to do a chin tuck. So you're going to take your chin backwards. So we're not dropping the chin. Take it back as though you're trying to take this curve out of the neck. It doesn't look very attractive. And now take the chin above the collarbone. So now just hold it there. Keep those shoulders. Now imagine I'm still stood against the wall and I'm trying to take the head down on its own. And hopefully you can feel that nice stretch between the skull and the shoulder blades. And then we start to fold ourselves down. Now I like to imagine I have a piece of chalk on my forehead and I'm trying to draw this line down the center. So we want the head to be as close to the body as we can. Relax your elbows and your arms. Now for some people you might just want to stop here. Okay? Maybe you want to go a little bit lower. Maybe you want to go lower. So I haven't really done much of a warm-up and I can feel the back of my legs are feeling quite tight. Again, that's why we've got those knees nice and soft. Now let your head hang. So gravity can just take the head, decompress the neck. It decompresses the shoulder joint. And now when we come up, we're going to exhale. So a long breath out. And then have a shoulder roll. So for some people, you might need to breathe out halfway, stop, inhale, and then carry on, exhale. So let's do a few more. Nice and tall, reverse the chin into the garage, chin tuck. Try and get that forehead close to the body, knees are soft. Just relax your shoulders, your arms, your head. Rolling yourself down. Once you get all the way to the bottom or wherever is more appropriate for you, you don't want to be in this position if your legs are screaming. And exhale as you come back up again. So as you come up, you really want to engage that tummy and pull that tummy into your back so that you're not coming up with your spinal column, you're coming up with the muscles. Let's do a couple more. Belly in, relaxing the arms, relaxing the neck, relaxing the head. Just let it dangle. And then breathe out, engage that tummy. Pull the front body into the back body. Once you come up, grow nice and tall. Have a shoulder roll. Last one. Again, whether you want to do halfway is entirely up to you. And once you come up, have a nice big shoulder roll. And some people do get dizzy, so you might just need to hold it there. So if you are one of those people, then just do half ones. Okay, so that was roll downs. And now we're going to just do a couple of exercises, maybe 2 or 3, working with the shoulder joint and just noticing how that can affect our spine as well. So staying against the wall, we're going to do what's called, let's do chicken wings first. This one is probably going to be super challenging for a lot of people. To do it properly, it's very hard. Even for me, it's a little bit of a challenge. So when you're against a wall, we're trying to get the elbow, the wrist, and these fingers against the wall without arching the back. So for some people, as soon as you pull the rib cage in, the arms want to pop forward. So that is the challenge, is this awareness, which again, while we do it against the wall, is the wall's going to give you a lot of that feedback. So, and you might find that one hand, oh yes, that hand is perfect, and then that hand is right forward. If you've had any operation, shoulder injury, anything, or you have, I'm just trying to think, like, these people that drive with the one hand on the wheel, 30 years later, this side is going to be tighter than this side. So you're going to have some kind of imbalance there. Now you can have the elbows down here. So let's just start there for a minute. And elbows against the wall. See, I can't get my fingers against the wall, but try as much as you can. And then become aware of your lower back and this part of the rib cage. So when we're standing there like, oh yes, I've got my hands there. But you might be able to see in that camera that I've actually got quite a big arch in my back. So what I'm going to try and do is bring the ribs and the hips closer together. So I'm going to engage this belly to almost think of taking that curve out of the spine. I don't want to take it all out, otherwise I'm not in a neutral spine. I just want to bring it back into that natural position. And then you might find, actually, I haven't got that much range now, Like in this arm, I can feel it there. And that's a good thing. So don't worry about if you're like feeling a lot of discomfort, it's good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slide the hands up towards the ceiling. You're going to get to some points that feel quite challenging, like there. Ooh, and then my arms need to move slightly forward. And then we bring it back. And then when you bring it back, again, just be aware that this rib cage is not popping out. And you bring it back down again. Really focus on the fingertips. So I'm going to stand to the side and I'm going to exaggerate what might be happening for you. So when we come there, you might get something like the wrists are doing that, or maybe even something like that. Okay, this one tends to be the more common one. But what we're actually trying to do is bring it so that the wrist is directly above the elbow directly in line with the shoulder. Okay, now, some people have got superb range of motion. That doesn't always necessarily mean it's a good thing. With a big range of, carry on with the arms, with a big range of motion, you then compromise with stability. Okay, so you lose the stability of the joint, and that would make it more easier to dislocate. So someone might be able to get their arms right back there. Like in yoga, you see it a lot. Those joints aren't so strong. And then vice versa, if you have a really strong, stable joint, you are probably not going to have that much of a flexible joint. And that's what Pilates is really about, is trying to get flexibility and strength. So now, as you're doing your chicken wings, what is the spine doing? What are your shoulder blades doing? So the shoulder blades will want to be moving out and back in. But is that causing your spine to go arch and then there, or can you keep your spine completely still? The other version is you can take the hands, which I quite like. It gives the scapula, the shoulder blade, a bigger range to work through. But I can feel my back is arching a little bit. It's a good one to do on the floor as well, so I can see my left hand. Good. Last one. And another thing on shoulder mobility is, give it a little wiggle. And it's the same with the hip joints. So some people have a lack of mobility or flexibility around the joint because of muscle tightness, so they can eventually stretch it off and get better range. But some people's bones are different shapes and sizes. We don't all have the same shape of bone. So if your trochanter, if the top of the arm bone is really big and the shoulder socket is really small, you aren't going to have this big range of motion because that socket, the ball of the joint, hasn't got much place to move. And it's the same within the hip. Someone might have a really small trochanter and a huge socket, and then they've got massive range of motion and more likely to probably dislocate as well. So don't always be, I want to use the term hating on yourself because your range of motion isn't like the person next to you. This is why we say in our classes, don't look at Mary next to you because you don't know what's going on in their body. Just be aware of what's going on in your body. So don't be upset if the range in your body isn't back there. Like I said, it could be if you've had surgery or something, and then stuff like that you can improve for most things. But sometimes it can just be the bones in the shoulder. So the next one we're going to do is dumb waiter. So again, feet are hip width apart. Just get into that nice neutral position. Bring the hands palm facing up. Now, there's lots of ways you can teach this, but specifically for today, I'm focusing on what happens with your spine. So you want to glue your elbows into your side body. So even if you put a piece of paper or envelope there, keep it there. So we take the hands out to the side, and now you might find this happens. So we're trying to stop this undue movement in the body, and this is actually this shoulder joint move more freely within the joint. So it's called shoulder dissociation. So as I take my hands out to the side, this is as far as I can go. Unless I squeeze my shoulder blades together, it's a different exercise, it becomes a different movement. So I'm trying not to move my shoulder blades. All I'm trying to move is this bone inside of the joint. So I don't want the whole joint moving. And that's going to help keep my spine still. If I wanted to, for example, strengthen my upper back and stretch off the front of the muscles in the front of the chest, what I could do with this exercise is then squeeze the shoulder blades together. You can see I can take it up further, but then I start to get a little bit more arching in the lower back. So there's a time and a place for each of these exercises. If I was doing a shoulder class and I was working just on shoulder mobility, we would be keeping this really still and we wouldn't move the spine. If I was working on back strength and all that, then I would be allowing the back to arch a little bit. So this is just more about an experiment, is how even trying to move your arms can affect your spine. So, like I said, this was more of an experimental class rather than a full-on class. Don't worry, there's plenty of other classes for you to do. I really want to educate you so that you actually know what's going on in your body rather than just making shapes, as we say. So that's all for this video. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one.